All right, so we've talked about dot plot, histogram. Now we're going to talk about a box and whisker plot. Okay, it has kind of a funny name, but it looks a little bit like a cat. If you look at your example on the front page of this, you can see it kind of has a box and then some lines that go out to the side. That's why we call it box and whisker, because it can kind of make you think of a cat. Okay, but the purpose of a box and whisker is to give you a summary of the data. It doesn't give you specific numbers, so we don't know exactly what numbers go where unless we've created it. But the box and whiskers is designed really to tell us where the middle of the data is. And it divides it into 4 parts or 4 quarters. So each part of it represents 1/4 of the data. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we start doing it. But you can just remember, it gives you a summary of the data in 5 numbers. So we're going to talk a little more specifics now. All right, so this is an example of what a box and whisker looks like. So you notice that there is a number line here. And then there are numbers that go along with it down here. And the box and whisker looks like this. It's usually above. This one is below the number line. But there's a box in the center, and it has 2 lines going out to the ends, which we call whiskers. That's where the idea comes from. Okay? So it's basically telling us that this is the center of the data, and it spreads from here to here, and 50% of it, or half of the data, goes between here and here. That's really kind of what this is designed to tell us. And I don't expect you to remember that yet. We're going to talk about more of that in just a second. But that's the whole idea of a box and whisker. All right, so let's go into some of the names. Now, one of the things that I've noticed about box and whisker, and as far as the milestone is concerned, is that I don't know, there are multiple names for the same thing. And I don't know which one they're going to. Okay, so there are multiple names for the different parts of it. And you really need to know both of the names for each one. And we'll talk about that more in just a second. So that's what we're going to start with, is we're going to name each one of these points. So you have a copy of this inside, and I left you some blanks so we can fill them in. Okay, so let's start with the easiest part in the middle. This line in the middle, get a red here, this line in the middle, that's the median of the data. Remember, median means center. So that's the median of the data. It has another name, which we'll talk about in just a second, but it's the median. Okay, now we have this number right here. That's at the very bottom. Okay, the very bottom, that is the smallest number in the data. So in other words, there are no more numbers over here. It's the smallest number there. So we call it the minimum. Now, if we call that one the minimum, what do you think this one right here is called? Maximum. You got it. It's called the maximum. Okay, so we have the median, the minimum, median, and maximum. Okay, this one between minimum and medium is about the lower numbers, right? The lower in the on the number line. So we call it the lower quartile. Now, you're going to have to get used to that word. You're going to hear quartile quite a bit. And quartile, quart means what? What does that prefix mean? 4. So it's the lower fourth. The lower fourth. That's how you can think of it. So that's the lower quartile. Now, if we call that one the lower quartile, what do you think this one is? How about the upper quartile? You were close. Okay, so we have lower quartile, upper quartile. Okay, now this is one set of words that refers to a box and whisker, but there's a whole nother set of words. Okay, and so we're going to talk about those now. We're going to start with the smallest one. It's called the lower extreme. The lower extreme. Okay, so what you got to understand is that you may see a number that may use the word minimum, or it may use the word lower extreme, but guess what? It's the same thing. So you just have to know both of these. And we'll work on practicing that. But you got to know both of them. So minimum or lower extreme. Now, if that one is called the lower extreme, what do you think this one is?
Higher.
Upper extreme. So upper extreme. And you know, extreme, that usually implies it's going to be way to the end, right? Now, there's a name for these three right here, and they all go together, which is going to make it easy for you. So this one is called the first quartile. The one that goes with median is called the second quartile. And the one that's left is called the, you got it, third quartile. Okay, so we have minimum, lower quartile, median, upper quartile, maximum, or lower extreme, first quartile, second quartile, third quartile, and upper extreme. Okay, and you'll have plenty of time to practice these, so don't worry about that. But all of the numbers that would be a part of whatever this box and whisker was about would fall between the minimum and the maximum, or the lower extreme or the upper extreme. There's another very important word you need to know, and it represents the numbers that fall between here and here. So those numbers that fall between there, you see I drew you a little line. That is called the inter, I-N-T-E-R, quartile, Q-U-A-R-T-I-L-E, range. Inner quartile range. Or IQ R for short. Most of the time we'll just call it the IQR. All right, so up at the top of your page, it's not on mine, but I'm going to draw it up here. Up at the top of your page, I drew you a number line like so. Oops, that goes too far. Do you see it up at the top? And next to that, I wrote you what? Yeah, so 100% of the numbers fall between this line and this line, okay? But there's more that you need to know about it. So they want you to know that here and here and here, this breaks it up into fourths. So it says this is 25% of the numbers. This is 25% of the numbers. This is... And this is 25% of the numbers. So if that's the case, the inner quartile range, or the distance between here and here, is 50% of the data. Okay, you need to know that. The inner quartile range represents 50% of the data. Okay? So if this is 50%, there's another 25 here, another 25 there. So if I asked you, how much of the data is between the minimum and the median, what would you tell me? 50%. How about the median and the maximum? Another 50%, right? Median and maximum. Well, it's 25 here and another 25 here. Got it? Okay, that's a little bit confusing, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about that later. But just so you know. On the back of page 29, you're going to trace this hand, or you trace your hand, spread it out, and then this is how we're going to help ourselves remember these 5 parts. So once you've traced it inside of each one, I want you to write what's here. So your thumb is the maximum or the upper extreme, upper quartile, third quartile, median, second quartile, etc., etc. So go ahead and trace your left hand and fill in the fingers. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. All right, now you can use your hand to practice that. Now we're going to talk about how to find the different numbers if we were looking at a set of data. So this is in your notes. So let's fill this in. So first of all, for the lower extreme, which is also called the minimum, so what number is that going to be? What do you think I'm going to fill in right there? Smallest. It's the smallest number. That's easy. Okay, and for the upper extreme, which is also called the? Whoa. That's also called the maximum. It's the biggest number. You can put that. Largest, biggest, I think it means the same. Okay, now, the lower or first quartile is the median of the I skipped the median. So the median is the middle number. You're used to that one. You've been doing that one. We do it the exact same way. Median is middle. What's the other name for median? Second quartile. Good. Some of you are getting it. Now, for the lower or first quartile, it is just the median of the lower half of the numbers. In other words, the smaller numbers. So once we find our median, then we find the median of the lower part. Then for the upper or third quartile, it's the median of the upper half. And for interquartile range, or IQR, it's the difference between the first and the third quartile. So once you find those, you just subtract. All right, now you ready to practice it? Of course you are.
Why not?
Of course we are. Never mind, I forgot about that. You're right, it's on your sheet. Okay, so let's work this together. Now, let me just tell you, there is one thing you must do before you begin. What is that one thing? You've got to put them in order because you will not get anything right unless you put them in order. All right, so I have written my numbers in order. Hopefully you've done the same. Now, before you do anything else, y'all, I will tell you, this is the number one mistake people make. They leave a number off. Count. Make sure your original list and your new list has the same number of numbers. So count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, I left one off, didn't I? Look at that. That's right. Oops. All right, let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, I have 11 in my first list, and I have 11 in my second list. Okay, now, I want to ask you a question I want you to think about, because there are two different kinds of these problems, and we actually have to work them differently. Today, all the problems we're going to work have the same situation. How many numbers are on this list?
11.
Is there going to be just one number in the middle if we have 11 numbers?
No. Yes.
And if we have an odd number of numbers, there will be just one median. That's important, because when we have two medians, everything changes. We'll talk about that tomorrow. So for today, all of our lists are going to have an odd number of numbers, so we will have only one median. So our first step, I'm going to go ahead and write down the lower extreme. What is it? 0. And the upper extreme? 5. Those are easy. And now we need to do the median. We can't do lower quartile or upper quartile until we have done median. So remember how I told you a long time ago, don't cross off your numbers as we go? It's because of this. If you cross them off, you won't be able to find your lower quartile and your upper quartile. Okay, so we're just going to underline them. So I'm going to start 0, 5, 0, 4, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2. The number in the middle is 2. Circle it. Circle the number in the middle. That's important. So our median is 2. Now, this is really the tricky part right here. Once you have circled the number in the middle, you're going to ignore it to find your next number. So in other words, 2 doesn't count anymore. Forget that it's there. And now we're going to find, remember it said the lower quartile is the median of the lower numbers. So everything from 2 over, these are the lower numbers, not including 2. Not including 2. So we'll find the median of those. Now we can cross them off if that helps. So 0, 1, 0, 1. Our median of the lower numbers is 1. Do you see it? Okay. So our lower quartile is 1. Same thing with the upper. Ignore that 2 in the middle. So I have 2, 5, 2, I'm sorry, 3, 4. Our median of the upper quartile is 3. And we have now found all of the pieces. We have the lower extreme, lower quartile, median, upper quartile, and upper extreme. All right? You with me so far? Now we're actually going to create one of these things on that number line that's down there below. So I want you to start with this. You're going to put 5 dots on this graph. So let's start with the lower extreme. Put a dot. Now don't put it on the graph. Put it right above it. So put a nice dot above 0. That's our lower extreme. Kind of. It's going to look different in a minute though. Okay. Then we're going to put a dot on the number 1 because that is our lower quartile. Then we're going to put a dot on the number 2. Then the number, and then the number 5. Everybody see it?
Yes.
All we did was put 1 dot for each one of these right here. Now, the one in the middle is the median. That is the middle of your box. So draw a line just like that through it. The ones on either side of it are the other sides of the box. So draw a line here and a line here. That is your box. Connect them. You just made the box, and now all we have to do is make the whiskers out and out. And we have now created a box and whisker.